Faith and Confidence. 1. Introduction. The meaning, role, and importance of faith, Sada, in the Buddhist teachings is as follows. Faith here does not mean handing over complete responsibility to something or someone without applying reasoned judgment. On the contrary, to do that would be an expression of emotional immaturity. Faith is merely one stage, and the first stage in the development of wisdom. Correct faith is connected to reasoned analysis. It must lead to and be validated by wisdom. It is the opposite to handing over complete responsibility or to a total entrusting oneself to something or someone else without applying a reasoned judgment, which is an expression of simple emotionality, avega, and leads people to stop making inquiries. Faith based simply on emotion is a form of gullibility. It should be amended and ultimately eliminated. Granted, the emotion stemming from a correct kind of faith can prove useful at early stages of Dhamma practice, but in the end it is replaced by wisdom. The faith included in wisdom development is perhaps better defined as self-confidence. A person has a strong conviction based on critical reasoning that the aspired to goal or ideal is both valuable and attainable. This faith inspires a person to validate the truth which he or she believes to be reasonably accessible. To help define faith in a correct manner, all teachings in the Pali Canon containing Sada in a group of spiritual factors also contain wisdom as an accompanying factor, and normally faith is listed as the first factor, while wisdom is listed as the final factor in these groups. Teachings emphasizing wisdom, however, do not need to include the factor of faith. Because wisdom governs other virtues and is an essential factor, it is more important than faith. Even as a personal attribute, wisdom rather than faith is the decisive factor. Those individuals who are most highly praised in Buddhism, like the chief disciple Venerable Sariputta, are those who possess the greatest wisdom. There are two distinct benefits to faith. 1. Faith conditions rapture, piti, which gives rise to tranquility, passaddhi, which in turn leads to happiness, then concentration, and finally to wisdom. And 2. Faith generates effort, the endeavor to undertake spiritual practice, and to put to the test those things believed in by faith, in order to witness the truth for oneself, which eventually leads to wisdom. Although these two benefits stem from an emotional basis, the process leading to their culmination must always contain an inherent aspiration for wisdom. As the purpose of true faith is to support wisdom, faith must promote critical discernment, which leads to wisdom development. and faith itself is well grounded and secure only when a person has established confidence and dispelled doubts through rational inquiry and understanding. In Buddha Dhamma, the quality of faith thus supports inquiry and investigation. The methods of appealing to others to believe, forcing others to accept a prescribed truth, or threatening disbelievers with punishment are all incompatible with this Buddhist principle of faith. Faith and devotion to another person has drawbacks. The Buddha even encouraged his disciples to abandon devotion to himself. Because such devotion is heavily invested with emotion and can become an obstacle to complete and perfect liberation. Faith is not classified as a factor of the path because it is wisdom, guiding and validating faith that is the necessary factor for progressing on the path. Furthermore, those persons with great wisdom, for example, the perfectly enlightened Buddhas and the Pacceka Buddhas, begin the path at wisdom without passing through the stage of faith. The cultivation of wisdom needs not always begin with faith. It may also begin with wise reflection, yoniso manasikara. Therefore, the Buddha inserted the concept of faith in the section on developing right view. He did not distinguish faith as a separate factor. Even faith that passes beyond what is called blind faith is still considered incorrect if it does not reach the stage of inquiry and of aiming for clear vision, because it fails to fulfill its function. Spiritual practice stuck at this level is still defective because it lacks a true objective. Although faith is of significant benefit at the final stages, it must come to an end. The existence of faith indicates that the true goal has not yet been reached, because as long as one believes in that goal, it shows that one has not yet realized it for oneself. As long as faith exists, it reveals that a person still depends on external things, entrusts wisdom to external things, and has not reached perfect freedom. Faith is therefore not an attribute of an arahant. On the contrary, an arahant has the attribute of being faithless asada, which means that he or she has directly realized the truth and no longer needs to believe in another person or in a rational explanation of the truth. To sum up, progression on the path is gradual, beginning with faith, sada, developing into a seeing or understanding in line with cause and effect, ditthi, and finally leading to a knowledge and vision of the truth, jnana dassana. At the final stage, the task of faith is ended. The importance and advantages of faith should be clearly understood. One should neither give faith too much value nor hold it in contempt, both of which have harmful consequences. A disparagement of faith reveals a misunderstanding of faith's role. A person may possess a high degree of self-confidence, for example, but this may simply be a belief in one's own mental defilements and manifest as conceit and egoism. In relation to moral conduct, Shila, faith is a vital factor. It provides people with supportive principles that act as deterrents, enabling them to resist temptations and provocations, and to abstain from performing bad actions. Faith also provides a channel for thought when people experience a sense impression that does not overwhelm the mind, does not exceed the power of the principles instilled by faith. The course of their thinking follows the path prepared by faith. Thoughts do not stray in unwholesome directions. For people who are still subject to mental defilements, faith thus sustains virtuous conduct. Although faith has many benefits, if it is not accompanied by wisdom, then it can be harmful, and it can even hinder the development of wisdom. In reference to wisdom development, it is possible to give a rough outline of the various stages of faith before one reaches a consummation of wisdom as follows. 1. One develops views based on sound reason. One does not believe in things simply because one has been told by others, in accord with the Kalama Sutta, see below. 2. One safeguards truthfulness, Satya Nuraka. One listens to the teachings, opinions, and doctrines of various parties with objectivity. One does not rush into making judgments about things that one does not yet truly know. One does not stubbornly insist that one's personal knowledge and opinions represent the truth. 3. When one has listened to the teachings and opinions of others, has seen that they accord with reason, and has observed that the person who offers these teachings is sincere, unbiased, and wise, confidence arises. One accepts the teachings in order to continue an examination of the truth using reasoned analysis. 4. One contemplates and examines these teachings until one is convinced that they are true and correct. One feels deeply impressed by the truth that one has witnessed, and makes effort to further one's investigations in order to deepen a realization of the truth. 5. If one has doubts, one hastens to inquire from others with a sincere heart. If one inquires not to shore up one's identity, but in order to gain wisdom, faith is consolidated by proving the truth of reasoned arguments. In this way, the purpose of faith is fulfilled. 2. Buddha's words on faith. The Kalama Sutta offers a principle for establishing a viewpoint founded on reasoned analysis for all people, regardless of whether they already hold to a particular theory, teaching, or doctrine. At one time, the Buddha was wandering and arrived at the township of Kesaputta in the Kosala country, which was the residence of the Kalama clan. Having heard a good report of the Buddha, the Kalamas approached him, exchanged greetings, and told him the following. There are, Lord, some ascetics and Brahmins who come to Kesaputta. They explain and elevate their own doctrines, but ridicule, disparage, revile, and vilify the doctrines of others. But then other ascetics and Brahmins come to Kesaputta, and they too explain and elevate their own doctrines, but ridicule, disparage, revile, and vilify the doctrines of others. For us, the Lord, there is perplexity and doubt as to which of these ascetics and Brahmins speak truth and which speak falsehood? The Buddha replied, It is fitting for you to be perplexed, O Kalamas. It is fitting for you to be in doubt. Doubt has arisen in you about a perplexing matter. Come, Kalamas. Do not believe on the basis of holding to oral tradition, Anusawa. Do not believe on the basis of holding to a lineage of teaching, Parampara. Do not believe on the basis of hearsay, Iti Kira. Do not believe on the basis of referring to scriptures, Pitaka Sampadana. Do not believe on the basis of logical reasoning, Taka. Do not believe on the basis of inferential reasoning, Naya. Do not believe on the basis of rational reflection, Akara Parivitaka. Do not believe because a teaching accords with personal opinions, Titi Nija Nakanti. Do not believe because of a speaker's inspiring appearance, Bata. Do not believe because you think this ascetic is our teacher, Samano no Garuti. When you know for yourselves, these things are unwholesome, these things are harmful, these things are censored by the wise, these things, if undertaken and practiced, lead to detriment and suffering, then you should abandon them. When you know for yourselves, these things are wholesome, these things are harmless, these things are praised by the wise, these things, if undertaken and practiced, lead to well-being and happiness, then you should engage in them. In the case that people lack an understanding of and belief in a particular subject matter, the Buddha did not urge them to believe. Instead, he encouraged them to consider and judge the matter according to the causes and effects that they were able to witness for themselves. In reference to the subject of rebirth, for example, there is a passage at the end of the aforementioned sutta which states, When Kalamas, this noble disciple, has thus made his mind free of enmity, free of ill will, uncorrupted and pure, he has won 4 assurances in this very life. The first assurance he has won is this: if there is another world, Paraloka, and if good and bad deeds bear fruit and yield results, it follows that with the breakup of the body after death, I shall arise in a good destination, in a heavenly world. The second assurance he has won is this: if there is no other world, and if good and bad deeds do not bear fruit and yield results, still right here in this very life I live happily, free of enmity and ill will. The third assurance he has won is this: suppose evil befalls the evildoer, then, as I do not intend evil for anyone, how can suffering afflict me, one who does no evil deed? The fourth assurance he has won is this: suppose evil does not befall the evildoer, then right here I see myself purified in both respects. In regard to people who did not follow a specific doctrine or religion, the Buddha would teach with kindness and in a neutral, objective manner. He would encourage the listener to contemplate the truth from an independent standpoint. He would not claim ownership of these teachings, nor would he try and persuade people to show devotion to him, or to convert to Buddhism. The Buddha did not refer to himself or to a supernatural power as proof of the authenticity of his teachings, but rather he referred to the way things are, and to the facts that people are able to see for themselves through their own wisdom. Moreover, the Buddha taught the basic principle of practice called principle of certainty, Apannakata. In regard to those matters of which general people lack an understanding, whether this be those things referred to as supernatural or even common phenomena which are not clearly understood, one should choose a definite and certain course of action rather than get caught up in speculation. A famous example of this principle is found in the Apanakajataka. Two separate caravans both needed to carry a heavy load of water in order to cross a desert. The first caravan encountered a goblin, transformed in the likeness of a man, who wished to deceive and devour them. Using phony evidence, he told the members of the caravan that just ahead they would find an area abounding with pools and lakes. He thus told them to throw out all of their water, rather than carry it unnecessarily. The members of the caravan were delighted and poured out all of the water from their jars, but they found no water up ahead, grew weak, and were devoured by demons. The members of the second caravan were similarly shown the spurious evidence of water. They applied the principle of certainty, reflecting, as long as we have not seen the truth of this matter first hand, we shall not simply follow this logic or conjecture. What we know for certain is the water we are now carrying in our ox carts. When we meet this alleged water source ahead, we can fill up our jars. By applying wisdom and relying on that which is directly discernible, this caravan was able to reach safety. This principle of choosing a definite and certain course of action may also be applied to Dhamma practice, and in regard to subtle aspects of the mind, Namadhamma, as described in the Apanaka Sutta. At one time the Buddha arrived at the Brahmin village of Sala. Having heard a good report of the Buddha, the Brahmin householder approached him and exchanged greetings. The Buddha asked them the following: Householders, is there any teacher agreeable to you in whom you have acquired faith, supported by reasoned discernment? Akaravati Sada, no, venerable sir. Since householders you have not found an agreeable teacher, you may undertake and practice this infallible and certain teaching, Apanaka Dhamma. For when this infallible and certain teaching is correctly undertaken, it will lead to your welfare and happiness for a long time. And what is this infallible and certain teaching? Householders, there are some recluses and Brahmins whose doctrine and view is this: gifts bear no fruit, offerings bear no fruit, sacrifice bears no fruit. No fruit or results of good and bad actions, no this world, no other world, no mother, no father. Now there are some recluses and Brahmins whose doctrine is directly opposed to that of those recluses and Brahmins, and they say thus: gifts, offerings, and sacrifices bear fruit. There is fruit and result of good and bad actions. What do you think, householders? Don't these recluses and Brahmins hold doctrines directly opposed to each other? Yes, venerable sir. Now, householders of those recluses and Brahmins whose doctrine and view is this: gifts bear no fruit, offerings bear no fruit, sacrifices bear no fruit. It is to be expected that they will forsake these three wholesome states, namely, good bodily conduct, good verbal conduct, and good mental conduct, and that they will undertake and practice these three unwholesome states, namely, bodily misconduct, verbal misconduct, and mental misconduct. Why is that? Because those recluses and Brahmins do not see the danger, degradation, and defilement in unwholesome states, nor do they see in wholesome states, the aspect of purity, the blessing of renunciation. About this a wise man considers thus: if there is no other world, then on the dissolution of the body, this person will have made himself safe enough. But if there is another world, then on the dissolution of the body after death, he will reappear in a state of deprivation, in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. Now, whether or not the word of those recluses and Brahmins is true, let me assume that there is no other world. Still, this person is here and now censured by the wise as an immoral person, one of wrong view who holds the doctrine of nihilism. But on the other hand, if there is another world, then this person has lost on both accounts, since he is censured by the wise here and now, and since on the dissolution of the body after death he will reappear in a state of deprivation in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. Householders, there are some recluses and Brahmins whose doctrine and view is this: there is no final cessation of being. Now there are some recluses and Brahmins whose doctrine is directly opposed to that of those recluses and Brahmins, and they say thus: there is a final cessation of being. About this a wise man considers thus: these recluses and Brahmins hold the doctrine and view there is no final cessation of being, but that has not been seen by me. And these other recluses and Brahmins hold the doctrine and view there is a final cessation of being, but that has not been known by me. If without knowing and seeing I were to take one side and declare, only this is true, anything else is wrong, that would not be fitting for me. Now, as to the recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine and view there is no final cessation of being, if their word is true, then it is certainly still possible that I might reappear after death among the gods of the immaterial realms, who consist of perception. But as to these recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine and view there is a final cessation of being, if their word is true, then it is possible that I might here and now attain final nibbana. However, the view of those recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine and view there is no final cessation of being is close to attachment, close to bondage, close to indulgence, close to infatuation, close to clinging. But the view of those recluses and Brahmins who hold the doctrine and view there is final cessation of being is close to non-attachment, close to non-bondage, close to non-indulgence, close to non-infatuation, close to non-clinging. After reflecting thus, he practices the way to disenchantment and dispassion towards being, to the true cessation of being. The following teaching by the Buddha reveals how knowledge still based on faith and logic remains faulty, still prone to error, and not a true realization of the truth. There are 5 things, Bharadwaja, that may turn out in 2 different ways here and now. 1. Faith, Sada. 2. Approval, Ruchi. 3. Oral tradition, Anusava, transmitted knowledge. 4. Reason, thinking, Akara Parivitaka. 5. Conformity to personal views, Ditti Nijana Kanti. This includes the act of reflection. Now, something may be fully accepted out of faith, yet it may be empty and false. But something else may not be fully accepted out of faith, yet it may be factual, true, and unfailing. Again, something may be fully approved of and agreeable, yet it may be empty and false. But if something else may not be fully approved of and agreeable, yet it may be factual, true, and unfailing. Again, something may be passed down by tradition, yet it may be empty and false. Something else may not be passed down by tradition, yet may be factual, true, and unfailing. Again, something may be well thought over, yet it may be empty and false. Something else may not resemble that which has been thought over, yet it may be factual, true, and unfailing. Again, something may be well reflected upon as conforming to personal views and beliefs, yet it may be empty and false. But something else may not resemble that which has been reflected upon, yet it may be factual, true, and unfailing. In the following sutta, the Buddha goes on to reveal a way of protecting or safeguarding the truth, Satya Nuracha. The means to conduct oneself in relation to personal views and beliefs, and the way to respond to views and beliefs of others. It is not proper for a wise man who protects truth to come to the definite conclusion. Only this is true, anything else is wrong. If a person has faith, he protects truth when he says, "My faith is thus," but he does not yet come to the definite conclusion. Only this is true, everything else is false. In this way there is the protection of truth. In this way he protects truth. In this way we describe the protecting of truth, but as yet there is no realization of truth. If a person approves of something, if he has received a transmission of knowledge, if he applies reasoned thinking, if he gains a reflective acceptance of a personal view, he protects truth when he says, "I have an agreeable view thus, I have received a transmission thus, I have considered with reason thus. My reflective acceptance of a view is thus." But he does not yet come to the definite conclusion. Only this is true, everything else is false. In this way there is the protection of truth. In this way he protects truth. In this way we describe the protection of truth, but as yet there is no realization of truth. The Buddha clarifies this proper conduct in another sutta. On one occasion the monks were discussing other people's praise and criticism of the Buddhist teachings, and the Buddha explained thus: "Monks, if anyone should speak in disparagement of me, of the Dhamma, or of the Sangha, you should not be angry, resentful, or upset on that account. If you were to be angry or displeased at such disparagement, that would only be a danger to you. If others disparage me, the Dhamma or the Sangha, and you are angry or displeased, can you recognize whether what they say is right or not? No, Lord. If others speak falsely, disparage me, the Dhamma or the Sangha, then you must explain what is incorrect, saying, 'For this reason that is incorrect, for this reason that is false.' That is not our way, that is not found among us. Monks, if others should speak in praise of me, of the Dhamma, or of the Sangha, you should not on that account be pleased, happy, or elated. If you were to be pleased or elated at such praise, that would only be a danger to you. If others rightly praise me, the Dhamma or the Sangha, you should acknowledge what is true, saying, 'For this reason that is correct, for this reason that is right, that is our way, that is found among us.' In the previous sutta on safeguarding the truth, Satya Nuraka, the Buddha goes on to describe the way of practice for realizing the truth, Satya Bodhi, and for arriving at the truth, Satya Pati, which includes the arising of faith. This description explains both the importance and the limitations of faith. But in what way, Master Gautama, is there the realization of truth? In what way is a person known as one who has realized the truth? Here a monk may be living in dependence on some village or town. Then a householder or a householder's son goes to him and examines him in regard to three kinds of states. In regard to states based on greed, in regard to states based on hate, and in regard to states based on delusion. Are there in this Venerable One any states based on greed, such that, with his mind obsessed by those states, while not knowing he might say, I know, or while not seeing he might say, I see, or he might urge others to act in a way that would lead to their harm and suffering for a long time? As he examines him, he comes to know there are no such states in this Venerable One based on greed, such that, with his mind obsessed by those states, while not knowing he might say, I know, or while not seeing he might say, I see, or he might urge others to act in an unprofitable way that would lead to their harm and suffering for a long time. Moreover, the bodily behavior and the verbal behavior of this Venerable One are not those of one affected by greed, and the Dhamma that this Venerable One teaches is profound, hard to see and hard to penetrate, peaceful and subtle, unattainable by mere reasoning, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. This Dhamma cannot easily be taught by one affected by greed. When he has examined him and has seen that he is purified from states based on greed, he next examines him in regard to states based on hate, in regard to states based on delusion. When he has examined him and has seen that he is purified from states based on delusion, then he places faith in him. Filled with faith, he visits him and associates with him. Having approached him, he gives ear. When he gives ear, he hears the Dhamma. Having heard the Dhamma, he memorizes it and examines the meaning of the teachings he has memorized. When he examines their meaning, he gains an acceptance of those teachings based on his investigations. When he has gained a reflective acceptance of those teachings, enthusiasm springs up. When enthusiasm has sprung up, he has determination. Having determination, he scrutinizes. Having scrutinized, he strives. Resolutely striving, he realizes within himself the ultimate truth, and sees it by penetrating it with wisdom. In this way there is the realization of truth. In this way one realizes truth. In this way we describe the awakening to truth, Satya Bodha. But as yet there is no final arrival at truth. But in what way is there the final arrival of truth? In what way does one finally arrive at truth? The final arrival of truth, Satya Pati, lies in the repetition, development, and cultivation of those same things. In this way there is the final arrival at truth. In this way one finally arrives at truth. Faith is vital for initial stages of spiritual practice. It is conducive to spiritual growth, and when applied correctly, it accelerates spiritual development. For this reason, a person with superior wisdom, but who lacks strong faith, must attain to a spiritual goal slower than one who has inferior wisdom, but has ardent faith. When faith is placed on a righteous object, a person saves both time and labor. When faith is placed on something unrighteous, it misleads and hinders a person. In any case, faith, as taught in Buddha Dhamma, is based on reasoned analysis and guided by wisdom, which prevents faith from being misplaced. If faith does go astray, it can be corrected because it is not a blind attachment. One is encouraged to continually examine the justification and validity of faith. A lack of faith is an obstacle which can interrupt and delay spiritual development, as confirmed by the Buddha. Bhikkhus, for a monk who has not been able to remove 5 stakes in the heart, has not been able to release 5 mental bonds, it is impossible that he should reach complete growth in this Dhamma and Vinaya. The 5 stakes in the heart a monk is not yet able to abandon are as follows. 1. A monk has doubts and hesitations about the teacher. He is indecisive and uncommitted in regard to the teacher. 2. A monk has doubts and hesitations about the Dhamma. He is indecisive and uncommitted in regard to the Dhamma. 3. A monk has doubts and hesitations about the Sangha. He is indecisive and uncommitted in regard to the Sangha. 4. A monk has doubts and hesitations about the training. He is indecisive and uncommitted in regard to the training. 5. A monk is angry and resentful with his companions in the holy life. He feels hostile and callous towards them. The mind of a monk who is doubtful, hesitant, indecisive, and uncommitted in regard to the teacher, the Dhamma, the Sangha, the training, who is angry with his companions in the holy life, is not inclined towards effort, diligent practice, persistence, and endeavor. A monk is not inclined towards effort, is one who has not yet removed the stakes in the heart. A lack of faith and confidence, i.e. doubt and hesitation, are major obstacles for the development of wisdom and spiritual growth, spiritual progress. In this case, the required task is to dispel doubts and to establish faith. The establishment of faith here, however, is not an acceptance of something or someone, or an entrusting oneself to something or someone, without honoring one's own wisdom. Rather, a person should examine the situation with wisdom in order to clearly see the causal relationships between things. This will lead to confidence and an end of doubt. In the following sutta, the Buddha describes this wise inquiry, and in this teaching, the Buddha encourages people to investigate the validity of the Buddha himself. Monks. A monk who is an inquirer, not knowing how to read another's mind, should make an investigation of the Tathagata in order to find out whether or not he is fully enlightened. A monk who is an inquirer, not knowing how to read another's mind, should investigate the Tathagata with respect to 2 kinds of states. States cognizable through the eye and through the ear thus. Are there found in the Tathagata any defiled states cognizable through the eye or through the ear? When he investigates him, he comes to know no defiled states cognizable through the eye or through the ear are found in the Tathagata. When he comes to know this, he investigates him further. Are there found in the Tathagata any mixed states, sometimes pure, sometimes impure, cognizable through the eye or through the ear? When he investigates him, he comes to know no mixed states cognizable through the eye or through the ear are found in the Tathagata. When he comes to know this, he investigates him further. Are there found in the Tathagata cleansed states cognizable through the eye or through the ear? When he investigates him, he comes to know cleansed states cognizable through the eye or through the ear are found in the Tathagata. When he comes to know this, he investigates him further. Has this venerable one attained this wholesome state over a long time, or did he attain it recently? When he investigates him, he comes to know this venerable one has attained this wholesome state over a long time. He did not attain it only recently. When he comes to know this, he investigates him further. Are there found in this venerable one who has acquired renowned and attained fame, dangers connected with renown and fame? Because for some monks the dangers connected with renown and fame are not found in them, as long as they have not acquired renown and attained fame. But when they have acquired renown and fame and attained fame, those dangers are found in them. When he investigates him, he comes to know this venerable one has acquired renown and fame and attained fame, but the dangers connected with renown and fame are not found in him. When he comes to know this, he investigates him further thus. Does this venerable refrain from evil without fear, not refraining from evil by fear? And does he avoid indulging in sensual pleasures because he is without lust through the destruction of lust? When he investigates him, he comes to know this venerable refrains from evil without fear, not refraining from evil by fear, and he avoids indulging in sensual pleasures because he is without lust through the destruction of lust. Now, if others should ask that monk thus, what are your reasons, Sakara, and what is your evidence, Anvaya, whereby you say, this venerable refrains from evil without fear, not refraining from evil by fear, and he avoids indulging in sensual pleasures because he is without lust through the destruction of lust? Answering rightly, that monk would answer thus: whether that venerable one dwells in a group of people or alone, while some there are well behaved, and some are ill behaved, and some there lead a community, while some there are worried about material things, and some are unsullied by material things, still that venerable one does not despise anyone because of that. And I have heard and learned from this, and I have heard and learned this from the Blessed One's own lips. I refrain from evil without fear, not refraining from evil by fear, and I avoid indulging in sensual pleasures because I am without lust through the destruction of lust. The Tathagata monks should be questioned further about that. Thus, are there found in the Tathagata or not any defiled states cognizable through the eye or through the ear? The Tathagata would answer thus: no defiled states cognizable through the eye or through the ear are found in the Tathagata. If asked, are there found in the Tathagata or not any mixed states cognizable through the eye or through the ear? The Tathagata would answer thus: no mixed states cognizable through the eye or through the ear are found in the Tathagata. If asked, are there found in the Tathagata or not cleansed states cognizable through the eye or through the ear? The Tathagata would answer thus: cleansed states cognizable through the eye or through the ear are found in the Tathagata. These states are my pathway and my domain, yet they are no cause for craving. A disciple should approach the teacher who speaks thus in order to hear the Dhamma. The teacher teaches him the Dhamma with its higher and higher levels, with its increasingly sublime levels. with its dark and bright counterparts for comparison. As the teacher teaches the Dhamma to a monk in this way, through direct knowledge of a certain teaching here in that Dhamma, the monk comes to a conclusion about the teaching. He places confidence in the teacher, thus the Blessed One is fully enlightened. The Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Blessed One. The Sangha is practicing well. Now if others should ask that monk thus, what are your reasons and what are your evidence whereby you say the Blessed One is fully enlightened, the Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Blessed One, the Sangha is practicing well? Answering rightly, that monk would answer thus, Here, friends, I approached the Blessed One in order to hear the Dhamma. The Blessed One taught me the Dhamma. As the Blessed One taught the Dhamma to me in this way, through direct knowledge of a certain teaching here in that Dhamma, I came to a conclusion about the teachings. I placed confidence in the teacher, thus the Blessed One is fully enlightened, the Dhamma is well proclaimed by the Blessed One, the Sangha is practicing well. Monks, when someone's faith has been planted, rooted, and established in the Tathagata, through these reasons, terms, and phrases, his faith is said to be supported by reason, rooted by vision, firm and is unshakable by any recluse or Brahmin or God or Mara or Brahma or anyone in the world. That is how there is an investigation of the Tathagata's qualities, and that is how the Tathagata is well investigated in accordance with the Dhamma. Doubts and hesitations, even about the Buddha himself, are not considered wrong or wicked. They are merely states of mind which need to be understood and dispelled by applying wisdom. And indeed, doubts can encourage people to increase investigation and inquiry. When people announce their devotion to and faith in the Buddha, before bestowing approval, the Buddha would examine whether their faith and confidence was based on reasoned consideration, and is evident in the following discussion between Venerable Sariputta and the Buddha. Lord, I have confidence in the Blessed One thus. There has never been, or will be, or is now another ascetic or Brahmin who possesses knowledge of perfect awakening superior to that of the Blessed One. You have spoken valiantly, Sariputta. You have roared the lion's roar of certainty. How is this? Were you able to perceive the minds of all the perfectly enlightened, noble Buddhas of the past, so as to say, these lords were of such virtue, such was their teaching, such was their wisdom, such their attributes, such their liberation? No, Lord. And were you able to perceive the minds of all the perfectly enlightened, noble Buddhas who will appear in the future, such their liberation? No, Lord. And I, who am the perfectly enlightened, noble Buddha of the present, were you able to use your mind to perceive the Lord is of such virtue and such liberation? No, Lord. So, as you do not have knowledge to perceive the minds of the perfectly enlightened, noble Buddhas of the past, the future, or the present, how is it that you have spoken valiantly and roared the lion's roar of certainty? Lord, although I do not have the power to read the minds of the perfectly enlightened, noble Buddhas of the past, future, and present, yet I know the way to realize the Dhamma. Lord, it is as if there were a royal frontier city with mighty bastions and a massive encircling wall with fortifications, in which is a single gate, and which is a gatekeeper, wise, skilled, and clever, who keeps out strangers and lets in those he knows, and he, constantly patrolling and following the course of the wall, does not see any joins or clefts in the wall. even such as a cat might creep through. He considers that whatever larger creatures enter or leave the city must all go through this very gate. And in the same way, Lord, I know the way to realize the Dhamma. All those perfectly enlightened noble Buddhas of the past attained to supreme enlightenment by abandoning the five hindrances, which defile the mind and weaken the strength of wisdom, having firmly established the four foundations of mindfulness in their minds, and developed the seven factors of enlightenment according to the truth. All the perfectly enlightened noble Buddhas of the future will do likewise, and you, Lord, who are now the perfectly enlightened noble Buddha of the present, have attained to supreme enlightenment by abandoning the five hindrances, developed the seven factors of enlightenment according to the truth. When handled correctly as an aid for spiritual progress, devotion to a particular person can be beneficial, but it also has drawbacks because it often turns into an attachment to the person and obstructs progress. First, here is a sutta passage outlining the advantages of devotion. A noble disciple who is completely dedicated to the Tathagata and has full confidence in him does not entertain any perplexity or doubt about the Tathagata or the Tathagata's teaching. It is indeed to be expected that a noble disciple who has faith will dwell with energy roused for the abandoning of unwholesome states and the acquisition of wholesome states. And he will be strong, firm in exertion, not shirking the responsibility of cultivating wholesome states. The disadvantages of devotion to an individual are outlined in this teaching. Monks, there are these 5 disadvantages of devotion to one person. What 5? When a person becomes very devoted to a person and that person commits an offence such that the order suspends him, then he will think, the order has suspended him who is dear and lovely to me. When that person commits an offence such that the order compels him to sit at the end of the line, then he will think, when that person leaves for a distant place, when that person disrobes, when that person dies, then he will think, he is dead, he who was dear and lovely to me. He will not associate with other monks, and from not associating with other monks, he will not hear the true Dhamma, and from not hearing the true Dhamma, he will fall away from the true Dhamma. When devotion and faith turn into a feeling of love, personal prejudice can impede the operation of wisdom, as demonstrated in this sutta passage. Monks, these 4 things may be generated. What for? Of love is born love, of love is born anger, of anger is born love, of anger is born anger. And how is anger born of love? A person who one finds dear, feels affection for, and approves of, is treated by other people in a way that is disagreeable, offensive, and unpleasant. So he conceives ill will towards those people. Even devotion to the Buddha can be an obstacle for the highest liberation when this devotion becomes personal, and the Buddha encouraged his disciples to abandon such love. At times he used rather extreme measures while teaching his disciples, as in the case of Venerable Vakali, who was ardently devoted to the Buddha and wished to keep close to him at all times. Towards the end of his life, Venerable Vakali was seriously ill and sent a message to the Buddha to request to see him. The Buddha visited him and offered the following teaching. Wakali, for a long time, Venerable Sir, I've wanted to come to see the Blessed One, but my body has not been strong enough to do so. Buddha, enough, Vakali. Why do you want to see this foul body? One who sees the Dhamma sees me. One who sees me sees the Dhamma. For in seeing the Dhamma, Vakali, one sees me, and in seeing me, one sees the Dhamma. Spiritual progress restricted to the level of faith is not stable or secure, because faith depends on external conditions and may weaken, as confirmed by this teaching of the Buddha. Here, Dali, suppose a man has only one eye, then his friends and companions, his kinsmen and relatives would help to guard his eye, thinking, let him not lose his one eye. So too some monk in this Dhamma and discipline practices by a measure of faith and love. In this case, other monks consider thus. This monk practices by a measure of faith and love. We should help by repeatedly urging him to act so that he may not lose that measure of faith and love. This is the cause, this is the reason why one must repeatedly urge some monks in this dispensation to attend to their obligations. When not developed to the stage of wisdom, faith is limited. It may lead to a heavenly rebirth, but it cannot on its own lead to the final goal of Buddha Dhamma, as confirmed by this teaching of the Buddha. Bhikkhus in the Dhamma well proclaimed by me, which is clear, open, and evident, there are no hidden catches. There is no future round for manifestation in the case of those bhikkhus who are arahants with taints destroyed. Those bhikkhus who have abandoned the 5 lower fetters are all due to reappear spontaneously in the pure abodes, and there attain final nibbana. Those bhikkhus who have abandoned the 3 lower fetters and attenuated lust, hate, and delusion are all once returners. Those bhikkhus who have abandoned 3 fetters are all stream enterers. Those bhikkhus who are truth devotees, Dhammanusari, or faith devotees, Sadhanusari, are all headed for awakening. Those bhikkhus who merely have faith in me, merely have love for me, are all headed for heaven. In the context of wisdom development, wisdom initially benefits from correct faith, and then develops gradually until it reaches the stage of knowledge and vision, jnana dasana. At this stage it is no longer necessary to rely on beliefs and opinions, because one knows and sees clearly for oneself, and therefore this stage transcends the domain of faith. Venerable Savita, friend Masila, apart from faith, apart from personal preference, apart from oral tradition, apart from reasoned reflection, apart from conformity with doctrinal analysis, does the Venerable Masila have personal knowledge thus? With birth as condition, aging and death comes to be. Venerable Masila, friend Savita, apart from faith, apart from personal preference, apart from oral tradition, apart from reasoned reflection, apart from conformity with doctrinal analysis, I know this, I see this. With birth as condition, aging and death comes to be. This sutta passage continues. Monks, is there a method of exposition by means of which a monk, apart from faith, apart from personal preference, apart from oral tradition, apart from reasoned reflection, apart from conformity with doctrinal analysis, can declare final knowledge thus? Destroyed is birth, the holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is nothing more to be done to reach this state. There is a method of exposition. Here, having seen a form with the eye, if there is lust, hatred, or delusion internally, a monk understands there is lust, hatred, or delusion internally, or if there is no lust, hatred, or delusion internally, he understands there is no lust, hatred, or delusion internally. Since this is so, are these things to be understood by faith, or by personal preference, or by oral tradition, or by reasoned reflection, or by conformity with doctrinal analysis? No, venerable sir. Aren't these things to be understood by seeing them with wisdom? Yes, venerable sir. This, monks, is one method of exposition by means of which a monk, apart from faith, apart from conformity with doctrinal analysis, can declare final knowledge. When a person has clear knowledge and vision, faith is no longer required. The person does not need to believe someone else. The Buddha's disciples, who had attained to outstanding qualities, knew and spoke about these things without needing to refer to the Buddha, as is illustrated in the following conversation between the Jain leader Niganta Nataputta and the householder Chitta, and the eminent disciple of the Buddha, proficient in Buddha Dhamma. Niganta: householder, do you have faith in the ascetic Gautama when he says, there is a concentration without applied thought and sustained thought, there is a cessation of applied thought and sustained thought? Chitta: in this matter, venerable sir, I do not go by faith in the Blessed One when he says, there is a concentration without applied thought and sustained thought, there is a cessation of applied thought and sustained thought. To whatever extent I wish, I enter and dwell in the first jhana, I enter and dwell in the second jhana, I enter and dwell in the third jhana, I enter and dwell in the fourth jhana. Since I know and see thus, I do not believe with faith in any ascetic or Brahmin regarding the claim that there is a concentration without applied and sustained thought, there is a cessation of applied and sustained thought. Arahants who have reached the highest degree of knowledge and vision possess the attribute of faithlessness as sada. They do not need to believe anyone else on matters that they clearly see for themselves, as confirmed by this discussion between the Buddha and venerable Sariputta. Buddha: Sariputta, do you have faith that the faculty of faith, when developed and cultivated, penetrates to the deathless, has the deathless as its destination, has the deathless as its final goal, that the faculty of energy, that the faculty of mindfulness, that the faculty of concentration, that the faculty of wisdom has the deathless as its final goal? Sariputta: in this matter I do not go by faith in the Blessed One. Those who do not know, see, understand, realize, and discern with wisdom, they would have to go by faith in others in regard to this. Those who know, see, and understand, realize, and discern these things with wisdom, they would be without perplexity or doubt about this matter. I have known, seen, understood, realized, and discerned these things with wisdom. Therefore, I have no doubts or uncertainties about this matter. The faculty of faith, the faculty of energy, the faculty of mindfulness, the faculty of concentration, the faculty of wisdom, when developed and cultivated, penetrates to the deathless, has the deathless as its destination, has the deathless as its final goal. Buddha: good, good, Sariputta. These following passages by the Buddha highlight the vital significance of wisdom. Bhikkhus, having developed and cultivated, how many faculties does a bhikkhu who has destroyed the tents declare the fruit of arahantship and understand thus? Destroyed is birth, there is nothing more to be done to reach this state. It is because he has developed and cultivated one faculty that a bhikkhu who has destroyed the tents declares the fruit of arahantship thus. What is that one faculty? The faculty of wisdom. For a noble disciple who possesses wisdom, the faith that follows from it becomes stabilized. The energy, the mindfulness, concentration that follows from it becomes stabilized. So long as the faculty of wisdom is absent, the other faculties of faith, energy, mindfulness, and concentration, on their own or combined, cannot bring about enlightenment. Bhikkhus, just as the footprints of land animals fit into the footprint of the elephant, and the elephant's footprint is declared to be their chief by reason of its size, so too, among the steps that lead to awakening, the faculty of wisdom is declared to be their chief, that is, for the realization of awakening.